While the world remains focused on the Middle East, the Pacific is quietly moving toward its worst strategic crisis in decades. Chinese military mouthpieces and state-controlled media have recently published reports claiming that Tokyo possesses an astonishing 44.4 metric tons of separated plutonium, enough to produce nearly 5,500 nuclear warheads, roughly close to Russia's stockpile. The report further argues that if Japan chooses to, it could become a de facto nuclear-armed state in a very short period of time. This comes at a time when China has, for years, been steadily expanding its presence across the South China Sea and the wider Pacific, through rapid naval buildup, nuclear submarines, advanced missile systems, and a growing military footprint. As one of their long-term strategic goals, reunification with Taiwan remains pending. The same reports have also accused the new Japanese administration of accelerating remilitarization and attempting to move away from the post-World War II order. But at the same time, Beijing, along with its closest ally, North Korea, is rapidly upgrading its nuclear arsenal and missile capabilities. And with the United States sending mixed signals to its allies, from shifting strategic priorities to uncertainty around long-term commitments, self-reliance is no longer just an option for countries like Japan and South Korea. So in this video, we'll explore why Japan is now pushing toward remilitarization, and whether it is even considering a nuclear path, despite being under America's nuclear umbrella. Has Japan begun to lose trust in Washington? Or are the combined threats from Beijing, Pyongyang, and even Moscow becoming too significant to rely on external security guarantees? On October 21, 2025, Japan elected its first female prime minister, Sanae Takaichi. She became first sitting Japanese prime minister to openly state in parliament that Japan could become militarily involved in the event of a Chinese invasion of Taiwan. And since then, relations with Beijing have remained tense. After approving a record defense budget of around $58 billion, Japan in March 2026 deployed upgraded, domestically developed long-range missiles in Kumamoto Prefecture, near the East China Sea. These upgraded systems, based on the Extended Range Type 12 missile, are reported to have a range of up to 1,000 kilometers, bringing most parts of Taiwan and China's eastern critical military infrastructure within reach. But these deployments are just the tip of the iceberg. That same day, Japan also deployed the Hypervelocity Gliding Projectile, its first hypersonic weapon, at Camp Fuji, a U.S. base near Tokyo, capable of maneuvering within the atmosphere at speeds of Mach 5 and above. At the same time, Japan is deepening military cooperation with its allies. Japanese Self-Defense Forces announces that it would deploy about 1,400 personnel, multiple warships, and aircraft, as well as Type 88 anti-ship missile systems for the Balikatan exercise, an annual large-scale joint military drill across air, land, sea, and cyberspace, including maritime strike operations with Philippines and the United States. Looking ahead, Japan is also planning to deploy US-made Tomahawk cruise missiles, which would significantly expand its long-range strike capability, covering North Korea and parts of mainland China. Alongside these military shifts, the new Japanese administration has also signaled to debate around Japan's long-standing nuclear principles, which traditionally restrict the country from producing, possessing, or hosting nuclear weapons. China has reacted strongly to these developments. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi has warned Japan of crossing the red line, stating Japan's remilitarization and any move away from its post-World War II commitments could escalate tensions across the region. Among all these, one thing is now very clear. Japan is ready to move from its pacifist, defensive policies and preparing itself for offensive deterrence and counter-strike capabilities. And Japan is not alone. South Korea is also undergoing a strategic shift. For decades, Seoul's primary focus was countering North Korea's threat. But with changing geopolitical realities, South Korea is now expanding its defense posture toward the wider Indo-Pacific region. Defense budgets are increasing, and coordination with allies is deepening. In January, Japanese and South Korean defense ministers held high-level meetings, followed by trilateral discussions with the United States involving top naval commanders. The focus is clear: integrated missile defense against common threats, co-development of advanced technologies including AI-enabled systems, and expanded joint maritime exercises. Despite their historical tensions dating back to World War II, growing pressure from China and North Korea, along with uncertainty in U.S. strategic commitments, is bringing Japan and South Korea closer together than ever before. Now, while Tokyo and Seoul are moving toward closer defense coordination, including artificial intelligence, personnel exchanges, and joint maritime operations, there is another critical military angle to consider: asymmetric warfare, especially in the domain of drones. According to former Japanese Defense Minister General Nakatani, in the last 9 months of 2025, Japan scrambled fighter jets 304 times to shadow Chinese aircraft approaching its territory. During this period, more than 30 Chinese drone incidents were recorded. On average, 2 F-15 jets take off for each intervention, and the cost of each scramble can reach up to 5 million yen. China's drones impose a continuous asymmetric burden on Japan at a cost of roughly 70,000 yen per hour. In contrast, many Chinese unmanned systems are relatively low cost, allowing Beijing to sustain pressure at a fraction of the cost. This creates a classic cost asymmetry problem, where defending against cheaper systems becomes increasingly expensive, a form of long-term strategic attrition. And that is exactly why Japan is now shifting its focus. Tokyo has called for a fundamental revision of its defense strategy, preparing for what it describes as new forms of warfare. Japan Defense Ministry announces its massive new coastal defense system built around uncrewed equipment. Known as SHIELD, Synchronized, Hybrid, Integrated, and Enhanced Littoral Defense, the concept reflects a layered coastal defense architecture designed to deliver a cheaper, asymmetrical capability suited to Japan's maritime geography. Consisting of aerial, surface, and underwater unmanned vehicles, an initiative that sits alongside a 9 trillion yen defense budget, with an additional 200 billion yen for drone acquisitions for Japan's military by the end of 2027. This system aims to erode China's expensive missile and air defense systems with cheap and mass-producible drone. The importance of drones has already been demonstrated in conflicts like Ukraine and Iran, where low-cost systems have repeatedly challenged expensive air defense networks. For example, a relatively inexpensive attack drone, such as Iran's Shahed-type UAVs, can cost tens of thousands of dollars, while interceptors like the Patriot PAC-3 missile can cost several $1,000,000 per shot. This creates a massive cost imbalance, where defending against one cheap drone can require dozens of times more expensive interceptors. Japan appears to be learning from this. Geographically, the Ryukyu Island chain, stretching toward Taiwan, is seen as a critical defensive line. In a potential crisis scenario, Japan could use these islands as a distributed defense network, deploying unmanned systems to overwhelm the enemy's sensors, weaken their air defense systems, and create openings for follow-on strikes. The concept is simple: use large numbers of low-cost drones to degrade high-value targets before deploying more expensive assets. On the other hand, Japanese current ministers are meeting with drone companies, welcomed the largest delegation of NATO to facilitate scalable drone production. In short, the countdown has already begun, and a major shift is already underway. Beneath the surface, the Pacific is entering one of its most complex military transitions in decades. What do you think? Will these changes be enough to deter China, or are we witnessing the beginning of a new arms race in the region? Share your thoughts in the comments, and thanks for watching.